All righty, let's get right to it and go out to the phone lines and introduce Brian Geltzeiler, host of Sirius XM NBA Radio. He also contributes at NBA TV. We talk to Brian once every several weeks, and he's great. Brian, how you doing, man? What's going on?
I'm good, guys. How we doing?
Well, I think I'm doing a little better than Guru. I have I have realistic expectations of this Warriors team, and I just saw him go on the road and win 4 out of 5, and I'm saying, hey, not bad. And he just doesn't think very much of it because they had bad opponents, and he's still thinking championship, Brian.
Well, listen, I think it's hard to not think championship when less than 2 years they won one. Less than 2 years ago they won one. So I can't totally blame him for feeling that way. You know, you look at the opponents, let's be fair. 2 of the opponents are good opponents and playoff teams. One is Miami. The other, and granted, Miami was shorthanded. Yeah. The other is the Orlando Magic. It's a very good basketball team. You know, so like they won 4 in a row here. Draymond playing at a high level. Here's the problem. Okay, the schedule for the close is a little bit of the issue. And listen, the 9-10 game is you want to be out of the 9-10 game. Ideally, it's very hard to come from the 9-10 game in the play-in tournament and be able to make any kind of meaningful run in the playoffs. It really is. What the Heat did last year was so unique, and they even came from the 8 and lost their first game. But the problem I see is the schedule. Like the next 3, first of all, you have Dallas in 2 of the next 3, who's been on fire and playing great. Now, Houston just lost a winning streak last night, but they've been playing well. Then, you know, listen, it lightens up a little bit there, but, you know, because you do have the Jazz and the Blazers, Jazz twice and the Blazers, you get the Lakers and the Pelicans sprinkled in there too. My point being is, if you told me they could get to the 8, I'd give them a puncher's chance. There are 3 games with 8 to go out of that 8 spot over Phoenix or Sacramento. The difference between the 8 and the 9, and I think as a media community, we don't do a good enough job explaining this to the fans and the listeners. The reality is the 8 spot is so advantageous over the 9 because if you win 1 game, you're done. In the 9, if you lose 1 game, you're done. That's a huge distinction. That's enormous. So I look at the situation for the Warriors, and I'm like, if you're coming from the 9, it kind of doesn't really matter. And I hate to be defeatist that way because it's been a hard season, and I think they've overcame a lot, and we've seen really in the end more good than bad. And I actually think there's hope for a much better year next year with the young guys and the old guys starting to mesh well. But I do think for what we have here this year, it's you start in this 9 or in the 10 and you're dead in the water.
No doubt. I hear you, BG. My partner's put a jacket on me, and he says I'm the worrier of the show. And I got to tell you, you know, a lot's happened in this Warriors season. I know you're not a doctor, but BG, out of nowhere, Jonathan Kuminga has missed the last 3 games with bilateral tendonitis in both knees. He might be out there tomorrow, but if he's not, you mentioned the schedule, it's go time. When you heard that news about a young 21-year-old phenom with tendonitis in both knees, I'm worried because I don't know. How do you process that?
I don't love it, but I also he's played a lot of games this season. It's the most games he's ever played in his career. He's played the most minutes he's ever played in his entire life this season, and we don't know if this is a larger problem or it's wear and tear. We really don't. It would be natural, even for a young guy, for it to be wear and tear because he's never gone this far before. But I'll also, listen, I have to give Steve Kerr a ton of credit because he has gone deep into his bench, more out of necessity than choice, but he's had some faith in some guys. They have actually found something without Kuminga that may make me scratch my head and hesitate a little bit about Kuminga back in the starting lineup. As great as Kuminga's been, I may make him a 6-man extraordinaire because I like Trayce Jackson-Davis in the starting lineup. And one of the biggest problems that the Golden State Warriors have is the lack of size. And Jackson-Davis fits so well because he's not only really athletic, he not only does smart things with the ball, he's big. He's good size, this kid. They need that. So, like, my point being is that it's Kuminga and Draymond are somewhat of a clunky fit together when you're playing against bigger teams. You're going to have to probably pick one of them, I think, going into the playoffs. And it may be that Jonathan Kuminga ends up with a bench role, or you play him at small forward, and it's Draymond, Kuminga, and Jackson-Davis, and it's Wiggins off the bench, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either. But I do think that Jackson-Davis as the starting center is something I would look to carry through the playoffs, no matter who's healthy.
Brian Geltzeiler joining us on 95.7 The Games, a host on Sirius XM NBA Radio, also a contributor at NBA TV. Boy, I just jump on that a little bit. One of my theories on the Kuminga, I get they haven't played 3 world beaters, but they didn't really skip a beat without Kuminga, is without Kuminga, they can kind of go just back and rely on the team they've always been, even if that team's not a championship team of 2 years ago, but they can run out Steph, Klay, Dre, Looney we see plays a little bit now that Kuminga's out. Wiggins was on the championship team. Could it be that, you know what, they can just kind of settle into the way they've done things for 3 or 4 years when Kuminga was a sixth man?
Listen, it's absolutely possible that you can do that. One of the things that I think is so important about this Warriors team is that you can really do a lot as a bench player for this team because you're coming off the bench with Chris Paul. And I felt like Kuminga would have a good year this year because he'd have a bench role with Chris Paul. And again, I didn't realize that he would get a little bent out of shape for not starting, call Steve Kerr out publicly, and then end up starting and having the best stretch of his career. I didn't think that would happen, but that certainly happened. But I do think, listen, Curry has not had the best year I've ever seen him have. And granted, he was very good last night, but let's not get crazy last night. That was, it was Victor Wembanyama and pretty much nobody for the Spurs last night. Nonetheless, I think there's been a little bit of a transition into relying more on younger guys. And I do think, Matt, to your point, it may be a bad trap to move away from those younger guys at this point in the season. Not that you don't want your veterans to play big roles. You certainly do. But let's not fade these younger guys either. Let's let them emerge in a way, because you never know who grows and gets better. By the way, another hat tip to Kerr. He's handled the Thompson to the bench and off the bench thing as gracefully as you possibly can, because pretty much what he's let everybody on that roster know is this is not about who you are or what you've done. This is about how you can play now. And Klay has started to play better and has gotten a starting job back when he started to play better. I think this has been a tough spot this year. I think Kerr's handled it well. And listen, the bigger picture here is some kind of off-season come-to-Jesus meeting with Draymond Green about how good you are as a basketball player, how vital your diverse skill set is to what we do here and all the success we've had for all these years. But you have to stop getting kicked out of games, period. Because the suspensions this year, go back and look at what they did without Draymond and these suspensions and how they struggled at times. Draymond fully healthy this year solves a whole lot of the problems that we're fretting about regarding the Golden State Warriors.
Brian, that was my next question. We got a lot of fans that, you guys are too hard on him, like we enjoy talking about Draymond Green and what happened in Orlando. But the coach said this word, unforgivable, and Steph Curry be overcome with emotion. Did that feel different to you? Because it did to us.
Yeah, listen, what you got there is palpable frustration from the people that has had his back for his entire career. So let's go back and review that sentence. Palpable frustration for us to not only see but hear, from the guys who has frankly been a Draymond Green apologist for his entire time there. And listen, I don't say that as throwing stones. Put me in the same spot, I'd probably be the same way, because he's done what he's had to do to keep Draymond playing as well as he could possibly play. Curry has supported him 10 times coming and going and sugarcoated it when he wasn't around. We got to do what we got to do when we still have Trayce back and all this. And by the way, Curry might not be the Hall of Fame player he is, and the greatest shooter ever to play without the assistance of Draymond Green. He's meant that much to Curry's career. So when you see guys like that give you some tangible frustration, what Draymond's doing, some of that's got to start to be a wake-up call. right? I mean, the games Draymond missed this year is been a huge difference for this team this year. They just haven't overcome it, and you can't expect them to overcome it. And I do think, listen, there's not a lot of time left for this group together. Clay's old. He's a free agent. Do I think they bring Klay back? I do. I think they figure out a way to work that out. Draymond signed for a bunch of time. Curry signed for a bunch of time. Guys are in the twilights of their career. The amount of pushes they have to get back to the finals, you can count on one hand quite easily. So what are you going to do next year? Well, next year, bottom line is we need our best defensive player, our best facilitator, the guy that defines all of our toughness. Okay, we need him on the floor at all times. We can't have him getting suspended. We can't have him throwing punches at Yusuf Nurkic and choking Rudy Gobert. We just can't have it. We certainly can't have him yelling at refs. Listen, I will say this, guys. I was thrilled with those officials the other night because I have to tell you, when it comes to Draymond, part of the problem has been refs have not wanted to toss him from games. They've let him get away with anything he wanted to get away with because he never thought he could actually get tossed from games. You want Draymond to stop with some of this stuff? Refs need to toss him from games. So the other night, that's a step in the right direction for everybody because he is. You watch how Draymond yells at certain officials and he smells blood in the water and they don't push back on him and he goes off on them. That's been part of the problem.
We see
as much as we say it's him, his teammates, it's the officials as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, Brian, let me ask you this. We're talking to Brian Geltzeiler, host of Sirius XM NBA Radio, contributes on NBA TV. Joe Lacob's on record a couple months ago as saying, we think we can put this thing together. We can still have a great season. Obviously, he said, if we don't finish strong or we don't get into the playoff, there could be big changes. As a guy who isn't in the Bay Area, what would your definition of a big change for the Warriors look like?
All right, so what's a big change? Not re-signing Klay Thompson. Yeah. That'd be a big change.
Yeah.
Right? And listen, I still think they're going to re-sign Klay Thompson. But the bottom line is that we're here at April 1st, 2024. His contract expires June 30th, 2024, and they don't have his name on an extension. So we have to explore that. Again, don't think it's going to happen, but that will be a major change. I think they're going to be out there trying to find any taker they possibly can for Andrew Wiggins. I think, and that would be a substantial change. Now, who will that taker be? Will they have to attach draft picks to him to get rid of him? Maybe it's some kind of swap with someone like the Nets to bring in the last year of Simmons' contract to get them out of the last, 3 years of Wiggins. It could be something like that. But I think that would be a substantial change. Listen, right. I think Draymond's going to be there. I think Curry's going to be there. And I think all of the young guys are going to be there. The two guys that we're looking at potentially having spots that could turn over and clear space for younger guys to play more would be Klay and Wiggins. And I don't know how much you're going to bring in for those guys because there is this thought process where if we're going to get rid of the high salaries, we're going to keep some of these guys on rookie scale deals so we can lower a luxury tax bill. Because as much as Joe Lacob is talking about, hey, we can make another run, they're not paying what they're paying in luxury tax this year to have a road game in the play-in tournament, lose and go home and not have one home playoff game at Oracle.
Wow. BG, I got to ask you one non-Warrior question, and there's a million I can ask you, but the one I'm going to go to is the one in the Bayou. If you were my advisor and I said, BG, I'm feeling the Pelicans and Zion, man, what would you advise me? Is there something there? Because Zion, I got to give him credit. I bashed him, but he's playing his ass off. Do I take them seriously?
You have to. And I say it for this reason. Listen, the West is so interesting because everything is matchup dependent. And I say that in this way. The Pelicans in the first round of the playoffs are likely to get the LA Clippers. It's a really good matchup for New Orleans. New Orleans the thing about them is they can match all of that size the Clippers have on the perimeter, match up really well defensively with those main guys, and the Clippers don't have a matchup for Zion. And that's going to be the spot for the Pelicans. There are teams out there that have a matchup for Zion. I don't think the Pelicans could ever beat Denver in a playoff series because they're going to put Aaron Gordon on Zion, and he can do a decent job on him. There are teams that have a matchup for him. The Clippers do not have a matchup for Zion Williamson, and that's going to be tough. Again, do I think in a situation against the Minnesota, I think Minnesota could find their way against Zion and do a decent job. The bigger teams will give the Pelicans a much, much harder time. I think the Pelicans could bludgeon teams that are smaller, teams like the Clippers, teams like the Thunder, a team like the Suns. I think those are the ones that they could really do a good job on. I would worry about the Pels against Denver, Minnesota, and even the Lakers with the size that they can bring.
Brian Geltzeiler, you're the man. We appreciate it.
Take it easy.
Always my pleasure, guys. Talk to you both soon. Take care.
All right, thank you.